Hi, welcome to the Like Father, Like Daughter podcast. I'm Paul.
And I'm Mariana.
And this is episode 4, The Mines of Mandalore. Today we're going to talk about The Mines of Mandalore, the Mandalorian-Season 3, Episode 2. All right, so first of all, a little recap on who we are. We're just kind of a father and daughter team who enjoy movies and shows and like to talk about the acting and the set design, stuff like that, because we're kind of involved in it kind of peripherally. So we're not professionals, but we like to talk like we are, pretend we are. So, all right, so a little episode recap of the Mines of Mandalore. The last episode that we saw kind of left off with the Mandalorian or Din Djarin. That's his full name, right?
Yeah.
So he's on his way to the Living Waters to reclaim himself to be a Mandalorian because he took his helmet off in front of somebody. So that was the last episode. So this one, we've kind of start off with on Tatooine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking, and we're looking at Pele is a soccer player, Peli, and she's like dealing with some Jawas and stuff like that, and
Like usual.
and you can tell that she's now, she's kind of like shady, she does kind of shady business because she's talking to a Rhodian actually, and he's like, like the Greedo like characters, right? And so then she's like saying, "Yeah, I'll have it done. It takes forever." And then the Jawas have the exact part she needs, and so she's doing some kind of shady work, right? And then the Mando, he lands with Grogu, and he's like, I need, he's looking for those, the memory circuits for IG-11, and she's like, no, I don't have any of those. Those are really hard to get. You can take this droid here. And we've seen this droid before, right? And we know it's R5-D4. And if anyone doesn't know who R5-D4, he's the red droid that in the original movie is the first one that Uncle Owen buys, and it blows its top. It blows the motivator, in the droid. And this is just really one of those fan service things where they're bringing R5-D4 back. So she's trying to convince him that he's perfect for the adventure that she needs, and you can tell that R5 is like, yeah, no, I'm not.
He's like,
he's like super
you're
nervous.
insane.
I love how they put like they can put that character development, or they can kind of put that emotion into a droid. They've always done that with R2D2, but
and
just
3CPO.
yeah, and 3PO. Well, 3PO talks though, so
Oh yeah, true.
but so when you got one of these beeping droids, right? They still find a way to emote, right? Which is cool.
Yeah.
So Mando's like, okay, well, I guess I'll take R5-D4, and R5 goes into the compartment where Grogu normally sits, and they take off for Mandalore. And they get on Mandalore, and actually he's entering the atmosphere. Everything's all choppy, and he gets there and you can just tell it's a wasteland, right? And so he lands, and he finds one of the mines that he thinks, actually he got these coordinates from Bo-Katan, right?
Yeah.
And so he finds where he's going to land, and then he sends out R5 to go explore. And R5 kind of comes back, and then he's like, okay, this was actually pretty cool.
Well, no, because he went to go get R5.
Yeah, R5 didn't come back.
Grogu
That's
was
right.
concerned about it.
Yeah, Grogu's like, like
Yep.
like whining and stuff.
The droid.
Yeah, and so here's the one thing that we didn't know about Mandalorians, or at least I didn't know, is that they can pressurize their helmets. So he pressurizes his helmet, he gets out, and he goes into the cave where he thinks, where he sent R5, and he's met by these creatures, right, that have like clubs and stuff like that, and so he fights them, and we find out later that those creatures were called. I'm just looking at my notes here. They're called Alamites, and they used to live in the wastelands of Mandalore. But now that nobody's there, they're kind of like raccoons. If you if you abandon a house, the raccoons would start to come in, right? So they're kind of just taking over any part of the city that they can. So he goes in there, he fights them off, and what's cool is he takes out the dark saber.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right.
But
So
she still doesn't know how
and
to
you
control.
can tell. So here's the really cool thing, is that they in the first season or second season, because this is second season 3, but last season, Mando couldn't wield that thing really well. It takes skill to wield the dark saber, and then they still showed that here. Like he still is not proficient with it, right? He's better with a blaster than he is with that dark saber, right? And so he's fighting them off, and he finally gets them. And he finds R4, and they kind of go more exploring in the cave. And then all of a sudden, there's this like insect. Well, I don't even know what to call it. It reminded me of something out of Elder Scrolls, which are Skyrim, which you have not played far enough. But the some of the dwarven mines have these like machines that have like spider legs and stuff like that, and you got to defeat those. It really reminded me of that.
I see.
But
It felt very apocalyptic.
yeah, this whole thing kind of right. So this whole thing really gave that apocalyptic feel. So whatever this creature is, it's got like one big eye that it's looking through, and it's kind of, you see this like spider-like creature, and Mando actually steps in a spot, right, and the thing is underground, right, and he steps in the spot, and all of a sudden the thing just engulfs him and captures him, right.
Yeah, it's
and
really...
and he had Grogu with him, and so yeah, because he went back to the ship after he found R5, and then he got Grogu, right. So then Grogu's kind of like left by himself, and he's like, ooh, and so that creature is taking Mando captive, right? And Mando's like, go get Bo-Katan. And
then he flies the ship
right.
by himself.
Yeah, so Grogu goes all the way back to the ship after escaping a couple of hazards. And then, remember he uses the Force on one of those Amaleits, right? So the one that Amaleits was blocking his way out of the cave, and the next thing you see is this Amalite being thrown across the whole way there, and so and then out comes Grogu. So he goes and he flies the ship to Bo-Katan, right? Meanwhile, we see Mando is being it looks like he's being drained of his life force or of his blood from this creature. We don't really know the creature's motivation other than to take whatever he can out of Mando. He doesn't want the weapons or anything because he kicks those aside, right? He just wants Mando's blood or whatever, right? So, so Bo-Katan, so Grogu goes and finds Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan's asking him questions, or just like, why are you here by yourself? Figures Mando's in trouble, and has Grogu lead her to where Mando is. And the whole while she's kind of like giving him a little history lesson of Mandalore. And in all reality, she's giving Grogu a history lesson, but in all reality, she's giving us a history lesson, right?
One thing though is also that I forgot to mention is that the air is safe, and they didn't think the air was safe.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Thank you. Yes. So she realizes it's not a wasteland, right? That the air is safe. But actually, Mando figured that out first. But she gets there and she's like, "Wow, it's not quite the wasteland that they thought it was, right? Like they can breathe there." So this kind of gives some not backstory is not the word I'm looking for, but maybe give some element of like maybe we could settle Mandalore again. Maybe we can get this back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So so she sees Mando's in trouble. She sees the Darksaber. This actually surprised me, and this actually I'm glad that they did this way. But so she sees the Darksaber. She uses the Darksaber to defeat the creature, right?
Yeah.
And then later she's making, Mando's unconscious. She had saved his life, and she's making some pog soup or whatever they call it. Yes, pog
It was
soup.
pog soup.
And so, and then he's like, I don't have time for this, right? Or, well, it's not like that. And this answered the question that I had yesterday. Remember, I'm like, they can never take their helmet off.
Oh
And
yeah.
how do they eat, right? And so she gives him some pog soup, and then we see him like lift his helmet up just enough so he can eat it, right? But not take his helmet off. And I'm like, okay, that question was answered. All right. So he gathers all his weapons, and what's interesting to me is that she used to own the Darksaber, right? And she could have just taken it, but because the Darksaber, because she can't just take the Darksaber, that's not how the tradition is. You have to earn the Darksaber. It has to be either given to you, or you have to win. Actually, you have to win it in battle, right?
Yeah.
And so she didn't take it. She just left it, knowing that it actually is his. So he takes the Darksaber, he takes all his weapons, and then he's like, I'm going to the living waters, and she's like, there's nothing really special about that water. It's like you're gonna get wet, right?
Yeah.
And so, but nonetheless she's kind of intrigued. Just despite she's like, all right, I'll take you to your living waters, right? And so then they get down to the living waters, and he starts walking in, and it's just this big cavernous area, right? And he starts walking in, all of a sudden Mando disappears, like sucked down, right?
Yep.
And she's like, whoa, dude. And she dives in. I think she used her jetpack,
She did.
which was really cool underwater, right?
Yeah, I was like, oh, that can work underwater.
Yeah. So she's like looking for him, and this was actually I thought I found this really cool. Her light was on, and because it was bubbly and foggy and everything, she realized her helmet light was on. And she realized I'm not gonna be able to see him because I'm just diffusing everything, And so she turned her helmet off so she could see his light,
Oh yeah, you're
which
right.
was really I thought
Smart.
that was smart. That was
Yeah.
smart story writing, right? Because it's just like, I mean, normally they
Makes sense.
yeah, it totally made sense. I was like, oh, that was interesting that they actually figured that piece out, because I don't know how many times I've been driving in the fog and my lights just make the fog worse, right? And so if you were actually to turn your lights, you shouldn't do this, by the way, but if you were to turn your lights off or at least turn your lights down, if you had that option, you'd see things better in the fog, right?
Yeah, another thing is that if she turned her light off, then she could see his light.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then she wouldn't be blinded by her own light. That was just
Yeah, it was just a really cool little addition there. It's so little, but it actually brought some realism to it. So, um, and then he's I think as she goes and she brings him up, she sees
a
the
giant.
giant creature, whatever it is. And did it chase her? I can't remember.
It did not chase her, but it saw her, and I think it started to move.
Right, it is. Yeah. So, and they think that, oh, I remember now. As she was about to get into the as he was about to walk into the water, remember she read that
She saw
sign.
the plaque.
She read the plaque, and it was kind of like like when you go to a museum, right, and you see that there's a plaque on what you're supposed to read, right? And she goes, it's the location of the living waters. It's like our ancient folklore, and it's the great Mythosaur lair. And the Mythosaur is the skull, that Mandalorian signal. That's
really?
the Mythosaur, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And so that creature down there may have been the Mythosaur that no one's ever seen, right? That's their whole legend. That makes sense as to why she was like, whoa. right? And so she got out of the water and she's like, completely stunned because nobody has ever seen him. It's called a mythosaur for a reason, right?
Yeah.
So, and then cut down end, right? So then we're like left with, okay, what was that all about? So,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's the recap. What did you initially think of the episode?
I thought it was pretty good. One thing I wish that they would have done is that while they were telling Grogu, like their history, that there was flashbacks of that history,
Uh,
so that way you were visually seeing it while also getting dialogue.
oh, so a little more show, don't tell.
But that's a small thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I really liked it. It gave, like I've said, it gave a very apocalyptic feel to it, which made sense because it's an abandoned world. Yeah, so I feel like the next episode's going to be a bit crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple things. One thing that you pointed out to me, kind of going back to that whole when they're talking to Grogu, is I felt initially that when they were talking to Grogu, it didn't feel well. It's a one-sided conversation because Grogu doesn't respond other than like little like
Yep.
and then just looking at him, right? And so it almost feels to me like that they're kind of talking at you
Yeah.
and they're kind of like it's just there as a device to explain what's going on. But then you did make the point that, and this point is actually valid after a little bit of research I've done, you did make the point that the Mandalorian is trying to teach Grogu how to be like a Mandalorian. Because he says things like, a Mandalorian needs to know his way around the galaxy. A Mandalorian needs to know his way around a ship. He needs to know navigation. He needs to know how to fight. He needs to know how to do all these things. And so he's kind of training Grogu, right? So he's acting like what wow. He's acting like Luke Skywalker would have in training Grogu, right? So
Yeah.
he's training him in not as a Jedi, but
As a Mandalorian.
As a Mandalorian.
And then when Bo-Katan brings him back and then rescues Mando, she tells Mando like he's really good at directing and stuff.
Right. So he's really good at directions, right? He's really good at navigating.
Two other things that Bo-Katan said is, you must be really good at the Force, and did you think your dad was the only Mandalorian?
Right.
Which I was trying to figure that out, because did Grogu think he was the only Mandalorian, which made sense, but...
Well, no, I don't. Because she doesn't know the other adventures that he's had. Well, maybe, I don't know, because Grogu hasn't seen all the other Mandalorians, because we know.
Well, that one time when he was with the other ones, Grogu wasn't with them.
That is a good point.
So Grogu probably thought, my dad's the only Mandalorian. Ooh.
Yeah. So, yeah. And it's interesting that people call Grogu, call Mandalorian, you're his dad, right? And so there's this relationship that's being defined, right?
Yeah.
So, and this one was still it still felt a little more kind of setup, right?
Yeah.
I think we're still in the setup phase. I think the nice thing I'm happy about is that it isn't taking a whole season to find the minds of Mandalore. Because,
Yeah.
that
would be annoying.
Yeah, so I mean, we're already to the point where now he's been in the living waters, and so I think now that he's done that, he can come back and be, he's redeemed himself.
Well, yeah, and he said all of it when he went into the water, so he good. It's just now they
Yeah.
have to face
Well,
their
and I
problem.
bet he's gonna bring back a mythosaur bone or something like that, or some proof of the mythosaur, and then things are just gonna escalate from there. From this is the way, and I don't know if they're gonna suck Bo-Katan into this, or because she's she doesn't really believe in the way, you know, so.
Yeah, but like another thing is though is that she was kind of like intrigued by Mando's dedication to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she is kind of intrigued by it.
Mm-hmm.
What didn't you like about the episode? Was there anything you didn't like?
Like I said, it was just that they could have, while talking to Grogu, maybe done some flashbacks.
Done some flashbacks, yeah.
Otherwise, I thought that like the setup for everything was really cool, very
Yeah.
eerie
Yeah.
feeling. I also think that this could be crazy for the Mandalorians, you know, knowing that their planet is safe to be on at least, and that if this creature is alive.
Yeah, right. Well,
So
okay. I think I've already mentioned what I didn't like about it. I'm thinking if there's anything else. I mean, the other thing is that it was too short.
yeah.
But everything else was really good. I mean, I really couldn't find a whole lot to really nitpick about it.
Mm-hmm.
Just having original characters like R5D4 and seeing Jawas and Rhodians and just, you know, there's always just these little pieces of fan service in there, you know. Just kind of looking at some notes here and just a couple things that were kind of maybe Easter eggish. No, I've already mentioned all those things. So
the creature, I don't remember really what it looks like, but I do remember it having horns.
the alum. Oh, you mean the Mythosaur?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I mean, in the
It would have,
symbol.
if you look at the Mandalorian insignia, it would have like tusks
Oh,
that kind of come down like, you know, in front of their face and then come out.
that's interesting.
I don't know if our little, just grabbing one of our pop figures here, if it has the, yes, we have pop figures because we're total nerds. I don't have, oh, you know, the back, when I got this pop figure, it had one of those paper backgrounds.
Oh yeah, same with mine, I think.
Yeah, here, let me get it up on the computer for you. Mandalorian.
And then you can look up the picture from the show.
Mandalorian, what did I call it? Mandalorian insignia.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, so this is right here is the Mandalorian insignia. Right, so that's the skull of a mythosaur. And if you, I'll put the link to this in the show notes so you can see that. And then we'll do a picture. We didn't get to see much of it.
No, we saw about maybe 2 seconds.
Yeah, Mythosaur, Mandalorian. Let's see, looking at this. In all honesty, I think all we saw was its eye.
Really?
Yep. That's all I remember. Because I was trying to.
Well, I remember it coming out just a little bit, but for a brief moment.
This thing is. Yeah, it's mostly the eye though that you see in the shot. Because I'm looking at screen caps here, and there wasn't a whole lot. So interesting that it didn't attack them.
Yeah, well, I mean, it might swim up to the surface and, you know, because it was massive. It would take time.
We see so many monsters in Star Wars things, right? Like things that come out of the sand, like the, I can't remember what they're called on Tatooine. There's all kinds of, you know, beasts on Tatooine. But I didn't associate the mythosaur at first, right?
Yeah.
Until I did a little bit of recap research. So, all right. Okay, so anything else you want to talk about this episode?
No, I think it was good.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, I think that's going to be it for us. Our next episode, we will recap and talk about the next episode of Mandalorian, which I do not know the title of, but that will be that'll be the Mandalorian's episode 3 of season 3. So yeah, you can get our podcast anywhere you get you download your podcasts, and you can also listen to this on YouTube if that's where you choose to listen to. If you have questions, you can email us at lfldcast@gmail.com. That will be in the show notes as well. Share this out with your friends so that we can start getting followers. Would really like to get some followers. So, yes, well, woohoo that. So we will talk to you later. Thanks for listening, and we're going to sign off. So bye.
See ya.